All right, this is Lance, the Night Nerd. We're here with Len Smith as part of our Lubbock-Con virtual events. Mr. Smith, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. We're really excited. I looked into it. Really, one of those Facebook you may like, and it was some of your work, and it showed you, and I messaged, and here we are now. So thank you.
Yeah.
It's really cool. One time Facebook did some good, but. Uh, you're a legend, a titan. I posted, I was like, I'm interviewing a titan of animation. You've worked on so many amazing projects over the years, but I kind of want to use a pun, kind of go back to the drawing board and talk about you, like what got you into animation and kind of your backstory and how you got to that point. If you'll tell us a little bit about that, please.
I think I've always been drawing since I could hold a pencil or a crayon. My dad could draw. He had a scholarship to art school here in California, and he kind of turned it down and became a carpenter. But I saw how hard carpenters work, and I said, I think I'll learn how to draw. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a lot less heavy
but
lifting.
yeah, I mean, I would get coloring books and use them as model sheets instead of coloring them. So, you know, I kind of think I was born to this.
Nice. When you were growing up, when you were using those modeling sheets and things, were there any characters that really stood out, like ones that you were your favorites to draw, or did you just anything and everything?
My favorites were the Hanna-Barbera characters like Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound. And of course, they were simpler characters to draw, so it was easier to get started with that. But my family always enjoyed cartoons. We always had cartoons on. My grandfather, who raised me basically, and my grandmother, but my grandfather worked in a rock quarry. So naturally, I grew up on the Flintstones. I would sit in his lap and watch the Flintstones. This is when it was on in the evenings. Um, so it always represented home to me, cartoons. Um, there was never don't do that. You can do something more with your life, or, they encouraged me actually. So that was very cool.
That's awesome. That's something a lot of people unfortunately don't get that. It's like, oh no, you go to school, be a doctor, be a lawyer, or something like that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but we need the arts, we need the animators and things, and so that's cool. As you grew older, and kept drawing and things, what was your foot in the door in the industry? Like I said, you worked on so many things going back to like Pound Puppies and Snorks, all these great shows. What was
Mhm.
like your first big experience when you knew, like, hey, I'm an animator?
Well, in high school, all of my teachers would also encourage me to draw. In fact, I wouldn't pass some classes if I didn't draw. I drew a caricature of my English teacher, and he passed me through his class. He said, "Don't ever tell anybody you majored in English," but you know, just because of one drawing. I mean, you couldn't get away with that today.
Yeah.
But everybody told me I should do some draw, which meant I should reject it. So it took me 5 years after high school before I decided to call Hanna-Barbera. And they gave me an appointment for an interview. I came in on that day. The man who looked at my portfolio, his name was Harry Love. He was a director on the old Tom and Jerry classic cartoons. He was an old guy, but he's flipping through my portfolio, and it was a homemade portfolio, just two pieces of cardboard. I didn't even really know what a portfolio was. I just needed something to carry my drawings in. So I put together a self-made portfolio, and he's flipping through it. And he looks at me after about 10 minutes and goes, "You drew these?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Wait here." So he gets it from his desk and goes into another office, and comes back about 10, 15 minutes later and says, "Can you start today?" So there I was with no formal training, and I was going to go to work for the studio that I grew up on and loved. So that was awesome. And I went to work for Iwo Takamoto, who was the guy who created Scooby Doo, who designed Scooby Doo, and a lot of other characters at Hanna-Barbera. So I went to work right at the top. He hired me for development of new shows, and it was like I won the lottery that day.
That had to be a real long and excruciating, like 10 or 15 minutes when he got up and, just like, "Did you draw these?" and just left. And you're just sitting there waiting, like stewing on your own thoughts and stuff. That had to be an experience for sure.
I was kind of numb through the whole thing. I was surprised that I even got the interview in the first place. You can't do that anymore. You got to go online and send samples and things and wait to hear. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's a great story, about being encouraged, following, and just putting in the work and getting it done. That's really cool. Like I said, now you almost have to prove that you can do all of it before they let you do one part of it. It's different.
It was pretty overwhelming in that I had no experience. I was just, the kid at the back of the class, just doodling in my notebook, and all of a sudden, here I am at Hanna-Barbera Studios.
Yeah, and that was, one thing that I like about cartoons is they still kind of carry that old Hollywood style in where you can see a cartoon and what studio it came from. You mentioned the animation style of some of the older Hanna-Barbera stuff, but you can see something and immediately know that's Hanna-Barbera or that's Disney or Funimation or whoever it is. And I think that's part of the appeal, not only of the cartoons themselves, but just the style and things that way. You can see, and they don't all try to copy. I mean, to an extent, but really, everybody has their voice, and like I said, especially when you were growing up, when I was growing up, you knew, right 2 seconds into that theme song, what you were getting into, and so that's really neat.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about the legacy of some of the projects that you worked on here. You worked on so many great things, like we mentioned, Snorks, Pound Puppies. That was my jam when I was a kid, was Pound Puppies, because we had a bunch of rescue dogs, and so that was. But things like Winnie the Pooh and Talespin. Talespin was taking the Jungle Book and updating it, and then Winnie the Pooh is such a classic, like, with that approach of having your own voice in there, but still honoring what came before, especially being an animation fan, knowing what came before and everything. How challenging was that to work out, and again, like, daunting with, okay, I'm doing Winnie the Pooh now, I'm doing the Jungle Book, but I still want to make it, I don't want to just do the Jungle, copy and paste it. Like, how does that go down?
Well, with Winnie the Pooh, that's a world, a small little world of characters by itself, and those characters were already established by the movies. So basically, on that, I was more of a costume designer. Every time the story would change and you'd need a new costume, that's where I would come in on that. But on Talespin, it called for additional characters, main characters. And so they asked me to do some takes or give my impressions of what these characters would look like. So I did Kit, Cloud Kicker, and Don Carnage, and Molly, and Wildcat, the main character, for the main characters. But I had to match the style of the original Jungle Book, so I had to kind of try and pick up Milt Kahl's style. Milt Kahl was one of the 9 old men at Disney and did a lot of the animation on the original Jungle Book movie. So it was challenging, but I love the challenge. So
it worked great. I love that show, and all the characters you talk about, those, everybody knows Baloo. It's literally still like, it's Baloo the bear. Like you people know who that is, and so bringing in these new characters and seeing how they interact, it was like my favorite. Baloo wasn't even my favorite part of the show. Like, I was a kid, so Cloud Kick, I wanted one of those little sky surfboard fan. I forgot what it was called, but I wanted one of those. I was terrified of heights and I didn't want to fly, but I wanted one of those to go through.
right.
Speaking of like the costume design and kind of tying the Winnie the Pooh stuff into the Talespin things, is that, because you're designing costumes not only for animation but for animated animals, creatures. Is that when you design clothes for human-based animation, like, is it a different approach or is it the same thing? Because you got to think of tails and different body types and stuff.
Yes, but it's, how can I say this? With Winnie, the certain things, like I did Tigger as kind of a Zorro type character, so I had to put him in a mask and a sombrero, and I gave him gloves, which were basically oven mitts, and so it's got to be little made up things that fit within that world, um, it's harder to talk about the process to do it.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
I don't give a lot of thought. Yeah, I don't give a lot of thought to this stuff. It just comes out. So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that I didn't even think about that. Because Tigger's not going to have a full wardrobe closet or
Right.
anything. So yeah, he's going to have to work with what he has and trying to
A wooden sword, and yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So you also worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is one of the staples of animation. Even now that everybody wants to be that level of stuff. It was still hand drawn, beautiful film, but working, you did layouts and stuff like that. How was that blending live action and animation? Being an animator and coming from that, but then also having to deal with real people.
The process on Roger Rabbit was pretty intensive. They shot all of the live action before we did the animation. And for every frame of animation, there was a live action photograph. So you had to put the photograph down and then lay the paper over it and then draw the characters to sync up with the live action. And that's on every frame of film where there's animation, and there was no computers then. It was all hand done. That's the old school, the way they did it on, Song of the South, for instance. There was no computer assistance. So we had all these boxes lining the studio. For each scene of the film, there was a stack of photographs, a few inches high. And I remember one time accidentally someone kicked a box, and those frames were knocked over the place. They had to, you know, uh, put those frames back completely in order, and it was a nightmare. But I didn't have to deal with that so much uh, because the layouts, didn't require frame by frame uh, animation. But setting the tone of the world of Toontown, it had to work, and I kind of went with a Max Fleischer kind of an idea, that everything was alive and everything could move and everything had expression. Back to the old kind of Betty Boop and Popeye kind of feel. I'm not even sure where I'm going anymore. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it did completely. And actually,
okay,
segues really good into, because so after that we had the animated series Bonkers, which was more or less a spin-off of Roger Rabbit, except fully animated because they were in Toontown and stuff. So again, you're creating new characters in, even though it's an established world, it's only a recently established world. So with that show, because you even did some writing on it and stuff too, when you're crafting that world, now that you have the freedom of full animation, like, were you able to have a little more fun with it and stuff?
That was kind of a leap. I kind of fought against it. They presented me with the idea. They had already pitched this idea 7 times to Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he turned it down every time. And then they brought me in on it, and it sold. So I kind of made that happen. But and then I wrote the first Bonkers short with Len Smith, who was a writer at Disney. But yeah, I kept pushing back, saying, so these are cartoon characters against live action animated character. How does that work? Where do you make that difference? But I don't know. I don't think I've ever even seen an episode, really. Honestly.
It only lasted like 1 season, I want to say. Yeah, 1 season. So
yeah,
but
the concept,
then, that was like
the concept of, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I was even, when I was younger, I knew it was Roger Rabbit's world, but like you said, it's like, well, but where's
the
the
line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the show's a whole lot of fun still, and again, it was part of that. That's when Disney was making that afternoon push with Goof Troop and Darkwing Duck, and Talespin was there too, and all of those. So brand syndication. That's when that syndication money was what everybody was going for, and but now it's the streaming.
And their intent was to own the market. So the more they could put out there. Yeah, I mean, I did the first season of the Little Mermaid series also.
Yeah, and I remember that one. That was I remember when that came out, because the movie was part of that renaissance, really kind of kicked off that rebirth that Disney had, and then the series. Honestly, like, not just because I'm talking to you, but I enjoyed the series more than the movie. And I remember because it was like just more kind of just self-contained stories and stuff was going on. And there was a video game that came out. It was based on more on the series, and because it had some of the characters from the series in the movie. And I remember playing that, and I logged way too many hours into that. But we're making that jump from the Little Mermaid movie to the animated series. Was that I mean, I think I already kind of know the answer, but was that a smoother transition than the Roger Rabbit to Bonkers transition?
Yeah. Um, because again, it wasn't that huge question of what is this? We already knew what it was. We were just adding on to the world that already existed from the movie.
Yeah. And looking at your resume, all these amazing shows, I think it's really neat that you have some, Little Mermaid, it's all underwater, and that's, physics and things are different there. And then your Roger Rabbit and Bonkers, physics are different there. And Winnie the Pooh, so being able to animate, a lot of people don't notice and appreciate, but it's there. Being able to animate within those different parameters and tell these stories is just awesome and amazing and beautiful. And so I just thank you, for all of that. That's really awesome.
Thanks for
But
noticing.
I can't draw, but I can watch some cartoons. That's I'm a lot like I grew up at my grandmother's house, and we had the old 6 hours of Fleischer on a VHS, and I'd sit there and watch all 6 hours, and it was yeah. And so
and then want to watch it again.
Yeah. I mean, we had all the Disney movies, but we also knew that there was animation that wasn't Disney, which it's something a lot of people, especially in the 80s, 90s, they didn't. Hanna-Barbera was kind of, that's when they were doing all the Tom and Jerry kids and Flintstone kids and Pup Named Scooby-Doo, and they were trying to get that market. And my youngest actually been watching Pup Named Scooby-Doo, and I'm like, I remember this show, but I don't know why it was, it's just funny to see. But we've talked about these different time periods, the old Fleischer stuff, which I'm the Fleischer Superman cartoons are I think still some of the best animation out there, and his Popeye stuff. We talked about the Hanna-Barberas, the 80s and 90s. Now animation is in a interesting place, I guess is the nicest way I can put it, because the hand-drawn style, which is what I prefer, it's starting to come back a little bit in shorts and things. But right now, the digital style isn't even the 3D digital. Like now, like the latest Tom and Jerry movie, they did 2D CGI, which was, I mean, it actually looked pretty polished and pretty good. But then you also have like the minimalist style, which was something that Chuck Jones did in the 70s with some of his Tom and Jerry stuff. Back then it was budget reasons, but today it's artistic reasons. What, with the ever evolving way that cartoons are, with all of those, kind of where do you see the industry going, and where would you like to see the industry go if that's a different path, those two?
I see a lot of people trying to revive classic 2D animation. I mean, I don't know if you saw the movie Klaus on Netflix.
Yes.
About Santa Claus.
Yes, that was a good one.
Beautiful. And I keep, and the game Cuphead, awesome. So I just keep hoping it gets traction, and picks up, because I'm so tired of looking at bubblegum CGI, and I mean it hurts the eyes sometimes. You don't get the same kind of emotions that you get from Pinocchio or Dumbo, or those are masterpieces, all hand drawn. You can't even do the stuff they did in computers today, the way they did it back then. It's I hope we can get back to the hand drawn, because it's from the heart of the artist. The artist is the actor, and you can't get that out of a machine, out of a computer. as hard as you try, you're never going to get there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we've seen that resurgence of vinyl in music, where you hear the pops and the clicks and in the original recording, because that's what the artist did. And I think, with animation, hand-drawn animation, because while it is, it has its hard lines and it's clean, it doesn't have that over polish like you were talking about. Sometimes if something is too polished, it just looks unrealistic. And so maybe, I think we've seen it in music kind of start to come back, and hopefully, because I know this year I saw the Academy Award nominations the other day. I didn't pay too much attention, but I think one or two of the shorts are hand drawn for animation. So, if one of those could win, I think that would be a big help for the cause.
Yeah.
Glad you mentioned Cuphead. Like that's my jam. I love that game. When they announced
it's amazing.
A hand drawn. I mean, they drew every frame for a video game, and I have it. It's inside. I have all the merchandise, but I have the big hardcover, the art of Cuphead, and in there they have Fleischer references. They have iWorks references. All this stuff, and it's just. It's a great game, but it's a beautiful animation as well.
Yeah, and throughout, the quality of the characters and the backgrounds and everything remain consistent. You don't ever see, it kind of fell into a Ren and Stimpy kind of thing or something for a second. It's all 100% awesome.
Yeah, and it looks better than some of these multi-billion-dollar. Because I'm a gamer, like that. That's movies, cartoons, video games. Those are my thing. Comics. We recently had Cyberpunk come out, and it was in these computer anime games. That's where you get all of a sudden the person's face is over here, or when they walk up to each other, I walk up to shake your hand and my arm is in your stomach, and you don't get that with traditional animation. And so I think that's again, hopefully games like Cuphead, stuff like that brings, and I think it will. I think we get a lot of people now who are appreciating the past, going back. That even right now, there's a comic book series called The History of Animation, and it starts like in the 1800s, the early 1900s, the very dawn of it. So I think as more and more people are exposed to the history and realizing that it's not just Walt Disney served its purpose, and it's has made some amazing things, but I think as people realize the other ones that were out there, because like people who don't even know who Chuck Jones is, I'm like, I guarantee you've seen a Chuck Jones cartoon in your life, or Friz Freleng, or people like that, the big Looney Tunes guys. So yeah, I think we're getting there. I want it now.
I don't know that it'll come back big, only because of the cost, and they're not the people traditionally trained to do it on a mass level. I was surprised by the new Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, how they kind of got back to the hand-drawn classic 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s style. So hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, Mr. Smith, thank you so much for doing this. This was I got to talk to a hero. Talk to somebody who's responsible for so many awesome things. I want to thank you so much. Where can everybody find you out in the internet? Find your work and your stuff and check you out. Where are the best places to reach you?
The most stuff I have up is on Instagram. I post there pretty often. Len Smith Draws at Instagram. Otherwise, just Google me, or on Facebook, just Len Smith.
Nice. Yeah, we'll definitely go check him out. So many cool things. Yeah, after the other night, I follow you on everything you do. You post so many old stuff, new stuff, talk about stuff. You'll learn things just by following you, and you'll see cool things, you'll learn cool things, and it's really great. So make sure you go give him a follow.
I'm still learning myself, so you won't ever see the same thing twice.
Nice. Well, again,
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully we can do this in person next year. Hopefully things calm down a little bit.
That'd be great.
You can come see the city of Lubbock. We have lots of dirt, so
My dad is from Texas, so
okay.
I would love it.
Nice, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.